also be celebrating Vesak Day in the next couple of weeks. So the question from Ray Fang is that should there be a difference in the way lay people practice in the month of May? If so, how should we practice?
Well, try and just do more. If you're already practicing, just try and do more. You know, use these occasions as an excuse, a good excuse to put more effort into your practice. So some people, they say, for the month of Vesak, you know, this month of May, I'm going to keep the 5 precepts strictly, or I'm going to keep the 8 precepts strictly sometimes, or I'm going to meditate more than usual. You know, if you meditate once a day, I'll meditate twice a day. Or if I meditate for 15 minutes, I'm going to boost it to 30 minutes at a time, or I'll do some chanting. You know, it's a time you could learn a new chant, one of the suttas or the parittas or one of the reflections that we chant, you know, learn it off by heart. There are these kind of things you can do. You make a commitment to upgrade your practice a little bit. Or it could be dana. You could, if you're living in a Buddhist country, you might say, well, I'm going to put food in the monks' bowls every day, or go to the temple and offer food every day, or do some act of charity or dana every day. Or you might just say, well, for Vesak, I'm going to do some special act of dana. So today at the monastery here, we were talking about something that is often done in Buddhist countries. People club together and they buy a cow or a buffalo from the slaughterhouse before it's killed to save it. And they have these projects where you purchase a cow or a buffalo and then you take it to a farm or a place set up particularly to provide a home. Like it's a bit like an old buffalo's home or an old cow's home. And they take them there and just look after them until they die, rather than letting them be slaughtered. So people were exchanging stories of this, how they've been there and the buffalo has actually been crying because it was being rescued. You know, buffaloes and cows cry when they recognize that they're being saved from death. I said, I was telling them I went once and they were like, there's a corral with 10 water buffaloes in, but we only had enough money for one, which is really annoying, but you know, what can you do? And we had to choose one out of 10 and they all came up and they kept pushing their face into mine, kind of like as if saying, choose me. And then another would push his face in or her face in. They're all trying to get in because they kind of recognized that we were there to help them. It seemed like that, but we could only choose one, which is a bit sad. So it's just an example because we were talking about that today, but you could do a special act of dana for Vesak, help a temple or help somebody in some way. You could do special months of precepts, or particularly 8 precepts. If you're already done keeping the 8 precepts, you could, you know, make special effort there. At our monastery on Vesak night, we have all-night meditation. People come and they stay all night, hopefully meditating, and they've done that before. And people sometimes have their doubts. They say, oh, all night meditation, that sounds difficult. You know, it's going to be painful or cold, or I'll get sleepy and hungry. But when they do it, most people are pleasantly surprised. They find that when other people are doing it as well, you get a bit of group energy, and many people find they've got more reserves of effort and energy than they thought, and they can do it. And they're happily surprised by their own efforts. And occasionally they have some really good meditation experiences, or they reflect on the Dhamma, they chant, and they just feel really good about what they've done, and they're doing it as an offering to the Buddha. So, you know, when you're remembering the Buddha's birthday and Enlightenment Day, the Buddha said there's 2 main kinds of ways you worship or honor the Buddha as a teacher out of gratitude. One is amisa puja, which is material offerings. So traditionally people will offer flowers, incense, candles at a shrine, or in the time of the Buddha, they would take those things to the Buddha. But that's Amisa Buddha Puja, or material things, material offerings to support a temple, say. And then there's Patipati Puja, which is honoring, worshipping the Buddha through the practice. So keeping precepts, meditating, listening to Dhamma, reciting the Dhamma. And the Buddha said of these two kinds of worship, he prefers Patipati Puja because that's more useful for us in the end. It's not that Amisa Puja is wrong or shouldn't be done, but Patipati Puja, learning to meditate, learning mindfulness, listening to the Dhamma, reflecting on the Dhamma is going to do you more good in the long run. So that's something you could put effort into in Wesak, whether it's on the day of Wesak or in the month of Wesak.
Sadhu Lampa. Thank you. Right, we have now a pair of sisters, Sakita and Kanti. If you can hear me, can you unmute yourself? Yeah.
Hello, everybody. Hello, Longpo. How are you? I have a little question here regarding meditation. When I'm calm, the mind is calm. I think teachers to contemplate is the best time to contemplate. But I'm not very sure how to do the contemplation. Is it that we contemplate on chanting, on the Dhamma, or can we contemplate on a problem that we have, something we want to improve on, and we're not doing too well? Please advise. Thank you.
Well, when your mind is calm, the mindfulness is more continuous. So you have this sense of stability, steadiness of mind. You can contemplate any aspect of these 5 khandhas, what we call the 5 aggregates or groups of experience. That's the body, feelings, perceptions, thoughts, thought formations, mental formations, and sense consciousness. And sometimes all you do is simply maintain your mindfulness, and whatever comes into your experience, that's what you contemplate. So your thought arises and you observe this thought is impermanent. And what's impermanent, it cannot be a real, true, lasting self. It doesn't have any substance because it arises, passes away. So you may be just observing thoughts, or you're investigating your perceptions, how you remember things and how you look at things. And you might bring up a specific perception, like perception of impermanence, and then apply that to your mental activity. Or you could contemplate feeling. So as we're sitting here, we've been sitting here for an hour or two, probably you get some painful feelings coming up in your leg. You move, but also you can contemplate the arising and passing away of feeling. Maybe at some point you feel very blissful and have a lot of pleasure, and then at another point you have pain and things, change around. You can contemplate feeling. Ajahn Chah said, if you're really at a loss, not sure what to contemplate, turn your attention to contemplate the physical body. It's a good starting point, because we don't do that very much. We rarely direct our mindfulness to contemplate this body, but that's something to learn from. So we have this teaching on the 32 parts of the body, like the chant that we do. And you can run through them in your mind. Once you're calm, you have mindfulness, so you're not too distracted, you're not sleepy. Go through the 32 parts of the body. So start with hair of the head. Visualize it in your mind's eye here. You might be sitting with your eyes closed, and you just visually bring up the vision of a bunch of hair or one single hair. You can send your attention up to the hair on your head and ask yourself questions. This hair, what is it? Is it really me, myself, do I really own it? What's it made of? It's made of elements, earth, air, fire, and water. Its cells come out of the blood through the pores of the skin and you get hair and it keeps growing because the blood keeps depositing fresh cells there. But is any of that a person, me, mine, myself, or is it just a, you know, a natural process that's going on all the time, whether we like it or not, know it or not? It's just hair. And eventually hair drops out or we cut it. It also gets dirty, greasy, dusty, smelly. There's all these different aspects of hair that you can observe, contemplate when you're mindful. And it gives you this sense of, we say, dispassion, where you're just seeing hair as hair rather than my hair and all the, you know, the moods we might associate with hair. Because, you know, we either like our hair or we don't like it. We're upset when it looks bad. Sometimes we're annoyed that it doesn't stay in place. Sometimes we're annoyed because we're losing it. You know, all kinds of things about hair. Those are all our attachments and this sense of self, and it can be suffering, isn't it? Probably not a serious suffering, but there'll be some suffering associated with our attachment to hair. So you're investigating that by just observing hair as hair. And then you go through the other 31 parts in the same sort of way. Visualize them, ask questions about them, observe them, learn them. And all the time you're bringing up this detached awareness and this sense of dispassion, where you're seeing the body more as a collection of elements. And this sense of it being a solid self, me, mine, myself, is dispersing as you do this. So that's one way, you know, Ajahn Chah said, if you're not sure what to do, contemplate the body. And you get to see the body is really not yours. Other people's bodies are not theirs either. And the more you understand the nature of your body, the more you understand the nature of other people's bodies, you can really change your perceptions to bring it more in line with truth, with Dhamma, and the way things are, rather than always stuck in our preferences and our ideals.
Do we have any final questions from the floor? Anyone at all? Comments, feedback? One or two more questions, anyone? Yes, Susie. Go ahead, Susie.
Okay. Good evening, Longfor. Thank you again for another great talk. Hey, Longfor, I want to just check with Longfor. Now that when we are meditating, and then we know with the 5 aggregates as well as the knowing, I mean, it's like experiencing that sometimes there is no form, no self, and then. But then there is still the sense of self sometimes that comes out. It's like there is a kind of disassociation of no self, and then when we are stressed, the self comes out. So it's like, I find it sometimes very confusing, because I know when I am doing the meditation, formal meditation, you know very clearly, one can understand that, you know, there is like no self. Now you know it's not me who's meditating, or the form, or it's the form that is experiencing it, and then it is the consciousness that is experienced, or consciousness that is meditating. Then I have a kind of mixed feeling. Sometimes it's like a lot of mind objects that changes, but the most is the sense of self is sometimes distracted. It's like, where is the self now? And then what does the self do now? You know, it's like a bridge between form and consciousness. So I'm a little bit confused in that. Is that something like that, Longpo? And sometimes I feel that.
I describe it as like, imagine you have a pond, and on the surface of the pond you have this sort of algae growth, you know, this plant growth on the surface. So normally it's covering the whole surface of the pond, so you can't see the water underneath and no light can enter underneath because it's covered the whole surface. That's a bit like the sense of self. It kind of covers over our experience. And we attach and identify with the body and our thoughts and feelings all as me, mine, myself. And that's why we keep falling into suffering of different kinds. We get stressed, we get tired, mentally tired and frustrated and stressed. But then when we practice mindfulness, it's like bringing your finger up and you start pushing aside all this algae and growth, plant growth. You get a little bit of light coming into the pond now because it's spread apart. That's like getting a moment of insight into, oh, actually, this is not self. This is a process of causes and conditions, and your mind sort of detaches and you feel good. You feel, you experience some peace and joy from letting go. And this is like seeing the light come into the water now. But then you take your hand away, or like you lose your mindfulness and insight. And it's like, oh, the plant growth, the algae grows back again. It's like back to square one. And it can be quite tiring, can't it? You practice and you get some clarity and understanding. Oh, it's not self, let it go. And then tomorrow, oh, back again, angry again, fed up again, suffering again, desiring something again, planning and desiring again. You know, so you're forever parting all the algae and growth, and then forever it's going back again. So it's quite tiring, that process, but you just have no choice. You have to keep going until one day you manage to part all the algae, everything gone. You know, that's full liberation of mind, but it may take some time to get there. So you just keep going. And anytime you bring up a bit of mindfulness, you'll start to get the clarity of letting go, seeing through the delusion of self in whatever the experience is that you're particularly suffering with. So it could be, you know, worried about your body. There may be worries about your health, your aging, what's going to become of me. Or it could be something more basic like, oh, I feel hungry. Where am I going to get the next bite of food from? Life is like that. Or it may be, you know, internal attachment to thoughts and feelings and moods. I feel really sad. I feel really excited. I feel bored. I feel angry. That can be very quick, can't it? Your sense of self comes up quickly as you identify with a particular mood or thought. It's like all that plant growth suddenly covers in really quick. But then you establish a bit of mindfulness, you say, oh, it's just a thought, let it be. And your mind goes a bit more peaceful. So then a little chink of light, and then it forms again, and you just keep going. And gradually you're learning lessons. And that's wisdom, isn't it? Wisdom and understanding grows through the practice. And little by little, maybe some of those chinks of light stay. And there's always a little bit of knowledge, at least some, that, oh, this is not self. And you can quickly return to that. Even if you're suffering, you sort of come back to the perception of not self, of impermanence. It doesn't take you too long to get there and see through things again. And little by little, you're growing in your understanding.
Okay, Long Po understand of patience and endurance as Long Po Ajahn Chah says. Thank you.
Elder Long Po, we'll take one last question. And this is a question from Auntie. Long Po, please define enlightenment.
Enlightenment.
That's right, enlightenment.
Oh, well, even the Buddha didn't really define it very well, very clearly. And I'm not even the Buddha, so I could only give you a little bit of a help here. What works for me is non-suffering. Yes, you no longer suffer. The mind that is free from suffering. And the Buddha said it's the unborn, the uncreated. So it's the what is not born, what is no longer subject to birth and death. No more creating of anything that leads to suffering. So no more attachment. We say the unconditioned, liberation is another way. You know, the mind is liberated from the causes of suffering, from delusion, from ignorance. But these are all very kind of superficial terms, because the Buddha said it's beyond language to describe it. So that's one thing you have to bear in mind. You can't describe the nature of the enlightened mind with language. Language will always be imperfect or not quite up to the job, but you do your best. So as you're going towards enlightenment, well, you use language to describe what you're doing, where you're going, what is the right path, the correct path, what is not. So if you're creating more suffering for yourself and others, then you're probably going away from enlightenment there. That's something you obviously can reflect on, you think through in your actions, what is leading to what. And particularly, you can get some small insight into enlightenment with what we call your moments of cessation in your experience, where you've been stressed in some way, sad, grieved, angry, frustrated, worried, afraid, but then you're mindful at the moment when that particular mental state passes. You know, oh, that's gone. There's a certain freedom there, isn't there? There's a liberation from that mental state. You're liberated from your anger at the moment that your anger passes, and maybe goodwill or a better state of mind comes up in its place. If you're mindful at that point, you say, oh, I'm liberated from this anger. It's like a little moment of nibbana. That anger, that stress, that worry has gone. You know it's gone, you know it's impermanent, you know it's not a self because it's gone. It's like a little moment of nibbana. So when you meditate, you'll be experiencing small moments of nibbana regularly. What you have to do is really become mindful of them and say, hi, it's gone. That suffering that was bothering me earlier, now it's gone. And it may return, and that's partly our problem. You know, it returns, and again, we kind of get weighed down by our own suffering and problems, of course. But if you can be truly mindful at the moment something passes, you say, oh, it's gone, it's cooled down, it's gone, it's extinct. We say it's extinguished from the mind. That's something to rejoice in and be fully mindful of. It's gone, it's ceased. And you build on that kind of insight.
I think that's all the time that we have right now. Do you want to take one more question, or shall we call it the evening?
If you have another question, I can answer.
Okay. Well, let me take this question. It says, Long Paul, can you recommend one or two simple chants that we can remember every morning other than Itipiso? And the second question is, for precept 6, refraining from eating at inappropriate times, is it strictly restricted to before 12 noon?
Yes. Answering the second question first, yeah, afternoon, we use noon as a cutoff. But there are a few medicinal things we can have in the afternoon or evening, you know, fruit juice without flesh, and tea and coffee, and we're allowed dark chocolate or a few kind of medicinal things like prunes. Some monks will eat cheese based on the description from the monastic discipline. Some monks say it's not cheese. That's a bit of a controversial one, but sugar, honey, we can have. So there's a few things we can have in the evening, just to, the idea being to give us some strength, some energy if we're hungry or weak or ill. And you get used to it, and what's available usually is enough to get you by. And in the morning, you learn to eat enough for your day's needs, for the energy for the day. And you know, some people will divide it into 2 meals, so they have a breakfast and then an early lunch. Some people just eat one meal, like in the forest monasteries tend to just have 1 meal, and you get used to it. It's not that difficult, but you use a simple cutoff of 12. Strictly speaking, it's when the sun is you know, at midday. And so actually, according to the clock, sometimes it's a little bit after the 12 or a little bit before. But for convenience sake, we usually just use the clock. When it reaches 12, then we don't eat after that. And we don't eat before dawn. So when it's still dark, we don't eat. We have this period between dawn and midday, which might be, say, 6 till 12 or whatever, which is enough time to get it done. If you're living at the Antarctic or the North Pole, could be trouble. Sometimes they have no dawn. But luckily, no monks and people are keeping 8 precepts at the Antarctic or the Arctic, as far as I know. The other question was, what was the other question?
The other question was about if you can recommend chants to be done in the morning besides Itipisu.
Chant, yeah. Well, any reflection that you like, because there's a whole bunch of different recitations, reflections, chants that we do. So some people like paritas. So there may be a particular parita chant you like. So it could be Bahum or the Metta Sutta or the Mangala Sutta. Could be a reflection like the Buddha, you know, gave this simple teaching, the 5 frequent recollections. You know, I'm of the nature to die, I'm not going beyond dying, the nature to age, nature to sicken, separation from all I love and like is assured. I am the owner of my karma, heir to my karma, born of my karma. You know, that's a very practical one to learn. It's very simple to learn off by heart. And then you're just reminding yourself of these simple truths of impermanence, separation, and the importance to reflect on the karma we're making every day. If you're a particular, you know, you're prone to anger, ill will, lose your temper often, well, maybe a recitation of the Metta Sutta or reflection on universal loving kindness. You choose a chant that you find works for you, that you find arouses energy, faith, or has good meaning. You can chant in English or Pali or both, but I would recommend learning it off by heart so that it's there for you whenever you want. And you can use it as both a form of meditation, just to bring up mindfulness. You can use it as a way to recollect the Buddha and bring up very wholesome qualities, faith and energy. You can use a chant to bring up wisdom, you know, wisdom teachings, reflecting on the teachings of the Buddha. But you have a choice here, and you have to ask yourself, which chant do I like? When you chant, do different chants in the chanting book, what one do you like? And once you've worked out which one it is, then learn it off by heart, and then you can use it as much as you want. And you can use it at any time of the day, but morning is a good time because you're starting your day and you know, it puts you in the right mood. You're remembering the Dhamma, the Buddha Dhamma Sangha, you're remembering teachings as you go off, maybe to work, do your thing. And most people find that's a very skillful way to start the day and will have a carry-on effect through your day. It's very easy to return to reflecting on Dhamma if you started the day with chanting or meditation.